So the last time I made a YouTube video analysis talking about Bitcoin and altcoins and why I decided to sell out all my Bitcoins, I got a lot of backlash on that and people didn't really like that video. And I can understand why. It was majorly around all of the hype that Jerome Powell was going to make a speech and it was eventually going to be changing policies that would lead to a rate cut in September. And literally that was what happened and the markets reacted positively. But eventually all of that bullish price action was taken away after the hype died down. So I think the major question will now be, what next from here? Is Bitcoin going to continue dumping and should we completely forget about altcoin season? All of that will be discussed in today's video. So if that's something that you're looking forward to, make sure you smash the like button, subscribe, share, and do all that nice stuff. Alright, so let's get straight to the video. Alright, so I'm going to be starting this video by looking at Bitcoin dominance. Now, this dominance chart is very important to me because it determines a lot in the market. And in the last video that I made, I really spent a lot of time on this dominance chart because I was trying to, understand what was likely going to happen in the short term. And in that video, I talked about this particular support level here, which is around 58%. And that's literally where we are right now. This particular area is what has held up Bitcoin dominance in the past. You can see here it literally was able to pull up dominance up by about 21% or 22%, pushing it back up to 70% dominance, and from here the same thing happened, pushing it back over here to 72%. But in this area here it couldn't hold it, and when it did hold it here, around 58%, it still pushed it back up to about 65% move, but it wasn't up to 70% move. So if this area here is going to hold, which it has held in the past before, like I just showed you, and if it pushes prices back up to 70%, it's going to be very bad for Bitcoin and altcoins, generally speaking, because this would mean that this trend line break that happened here would be completely invalidated. And we don't want to see that if we want to see altcoins rally. We want to see this thing continue to drop down. Looking at things like the stochastic RSI and you can see that we are literally at oversold territories and we may be in fact due for a reversal on this thing. Just looking at this here, we already managed to wake up at 58.7%, and now we are down to 58.12%. So it's possible that we could continue upwards here as the week goes by. Today is just Tuesday, so it's possible that we could actually fill that up and continue upwards. And if we have this momentum here, we want to pray that it stops at this resistance level here. Now, this resistance level here is very significant because this is where the trend line was. As you can see, this trend line is the same one that has been holding the market since November of 2022. I'm talking about Bitcoin dominance trend line now. This is the same one that has been holding the market since December of 2022. Literally the entire bull run, in my opinion. It's not for my opinion, it is actually a fact. So why I was really excited about altcoin season was because this had finally broken. But one thing I want to point out though is that prior to this new trend line that I just drew here, because this trend line is actually new, this was what that trend line looks like before. It was something like this before, and it made a whole lot more sense. So prior to me adjusting the trend line, this was exactly how it was here, and this was right before this broke below here. Now, when this happened, I was pretty sure that we were going to have altcoin season. This was around November of 2024, just around the period that Donald Trump won the election, and I was pretty sure that this Bitcoin dominance was going to continue to drop because that is exactly what had happened in the previous cycles. And as you can see, my calculation was 224 days right after the Bitcoin halving. And I didn't just make up these dates. This was exactly what happened in the previous cycle here. You can see right after that, right after this Bitcoin halving, we had Bitcoin dominance plummet really bad. And it's the same thing in the previous cycles before that. So it made sense for this to happen, in my opinion. But guess what? The market tricked everybody and began to dump in January of the next year, of 2025 actually. And as you can see, that's exactly what happened. it's completely deceived everybody, and people lost money. Not me anyway, because I actually made this call in February and was saying that okay, this market looks like it's about to drop really, really bad. And now if we go to where we are currently, this is what my trend line looks like right now. So if we are to repeat something like this again, something like the deception that we experienced in January, we'll be looking at a move like this. Something like this, and this time we could be headed back to 70k, just like I showed you, because this area here is a very, very strong support level, and we will be invalidating this trend line. We don't want to see this happen if we want to see altcoins move. This is not something that we want to see. So our prayer right now should be that this does not happen. What I want to see at most is something like this. What I want to see at most is for Bitcoin dominance to get here. Actually, let me just delete all of this. What I want to see is for Bitcoin dominance to do something like this. Come here and then drop further. This is what we want to see if we're going to see altcoin season play out. But the problem with this is that we are running out of time in this cycle. We are actually running out of time. We are running out of time. This is August and we're about to enter Q4. September is going to be the last month of Q3, so September had better be really, really bullish for the markets. I mean, I expect that anyway, because we're going to get rate cuts, but these rate cuts are better lead to really, really bullish price actions for altcoins. If not, we may just lose the opportunity for an altcoin season. It's the sad reality, but the market does what the market does. You can't play the market. You can't play the market expecting it to do what you want it to do. You can only play the market based on what it is currently doing. We can't jump into any conclusions for the market. We let the market show us what it's about to do, and then we follow through, looking for the opportunities to make money. Now let's go to something like Bitcoin charts. Now looking at the Bitcoin chart, it's still sitting really, really high at, practically new all-time highs in my opinion, even though the actual new all-time highs was 125k, but around 109k is actually still premium in my opinion. $109,000 is premium price to be getting into Bitcoin if you're going to be investing long term. What you want to do is wait for something like this, 74k, 75k, 70k. If you think that's not going to happen, or if you think that's impossible, then you've not been in this market long enough, obviously. I was reading through the comment section of the last video that I made, and I got lots of insults, people calling me a newbie into the market. People calling me a newbie into the market because I decided to sell out. I've experienced 2 cycles in this market. The first cycle, I came into the market at the very top, which was in 2017. I will show you. I like to mention this thing because, it lets people to know that you can't come into the market as an expert. Obviously, experience will teach you a couple of things. This was literally when I came into the market in 2017, and I experienced all of this bear market, and I held up on the way, and I held up all the way until here. In the next cycle, I took some profits, but I did not take as much profits as I should, and I ended up experiencing all of this again. So when Bitcoin got all the way here and I realized that this thing was literally a cycle repeating, I knew that I had to buy a lot, and that was why I did all the videos that I made at that time, and I bought lots and lots of crypto at this particular area here, November of 2022. And I've held up all the way to here. I've participated in this market actively all the way to where we are now. And you're out there calling me a newbie, telling me I'm misleading people because I'm taking profits when I should be taking profits. Come on. It doesn't make any sense. The problem with most people is that you will get into the market at a very high point and expect that prices will still keep going up. It doesn't work that way. You cannot buy premium and expect to sell at a higher premium. No. You have to buy at discounts and sell cheap. I didn't create the rules. I'm just participating in the market. Anyway, back to this. Now, looking at Bitcoin right now, Bitcoin is in a little bit, or still in that little bit of situation. We just printed this red histogram here, which is confirming that, the bearish momentum is about to come into the market some more. I know most people think that, Bitcoin has dumped and I should probably buy the dip, but to be honest, this is not a buying the dip opportunity. This is a time that you want to, take as much profits as you can out of the market, because it could get worse. It could actually get worse, despite the fact that we are getting rate cuts. Yes, I know. And truth is that the rate cuts, in my opinion, would only lead to some kind of manipulation. Look at this. This is where we are now, and the rate cut is coming in September. Let's say we have markets move like this. Probability. Let's say we have the markets move like this, and then we get the bounce up all the way to here. We get all the way to, let's say, 22k, 122k. We would only be printing a double top. We may not be able to push prices to new all-time highs, because eventually after the rate cuts, it's going to die. The hype is going to die down, and what will happen to the market? It will lead to a crash. And if this should happen like this, it's going to be even much more worse, because that crash is going to be really, really disastrous. It could dump all the way back to BlackRock's purchase. As bad as this, 49, 50k, it's very, very possible. If you think that something like this is not possible in crypto, then you have not been in this market long enough. You clearly have not been in this market long enough. Look at this. How many percent drop was this in the last cycle? This was a 76% drop. From where we are currently to where I'm projecting is going to be, is only even 60%. It's just 60%. So what does 76% look like? 27k. And if you really think 27k is not possible, then I'm saying it again, you've not been in this market long enough. Because if you even look at 27k, you will see that this is where there was a huge buying spree that came into the market. Look at this. This is where it really started from, around here. So if you think that's not possible, then you have not been in this market long enough, and you are going to be in for a very, very heavy shock. I'm not saying this is exactly what's going to happen, but I'm not ruling it out as something that is impossible. You have to understand these things. So what we want to wait for before even considering any buying opportunity is that you want to wait for this bearish move to be over. We want to wait for the MACD to be done. We want to wait for the stochastic RSI to be completely done. We want to wait for all of the bearish price action to be completely done out of the market. That is exactly what we want to see happen before we consider buying anything. In my opinion anyway, I don't control the market, like I always like to say. Now if we go to something like the 1 day time frame, there's a little bit of hopium here on the 1 day time frame, but we can't really draw any conclusions out of it because the weekly is still very bearish. And I'm looking at right here, I'm looking at a potential falling wedge, something like this here, up until this trend line. I can't really project that right now because it has not happened and it's still information, but I'm keeping it as something to look into, basically, as a potential for price movement. It's very similar to what happened here in the past, when the prices were really dropping all the way to this support level here, and it's also very similar to what I think could play out here as well. The only difference would just be that we don't have to support levels, because here we had the trend line here supporting this, and we also had this huge flipping, which was a previous resistance turning into a support. So that could also be a possibility here, but the only difference would be that this is not a resistance level. It would have made a lot of sense if we had a reversal at this point here, but we didn't get that. Instead, we broke below it, and the M formation is about done playing. No, it's not even about done playing. We still have a lot of move downwards, because if this is the move here, then the targets will be something like this. Yeah, so as low as 103k, 102k is actually a possible price action. I'm currently still in my short positions. You can see my drawings here. I'm still in my short positions, hoping to hold all the way to this bottom here. But here is where there will be a big issue though. If we breach below this support area here, this trend line, if we breach below this trend line, if we do something like this on prices, yeah, and prices breaches below here and does something like this, if the prices breach below this point and maybe does something like this to reverse here, we have a serious problem, because we would have broken two major support levels. We would have broken, number one, the major support level for the entire bull run. Look at this. We've never broken it before. If we break below here, we would have breached the major support level for the entire bull run, and that's going to be a very huge problem, because that would officially mean, in my opinion, that we're about to start the bear market, and I'll make that call. But Right now I can't say we are in a bear market. I can't say that we've started a bear market because we haven't breached anything yet. So yes, so yes, potentially we are still in a bull run, even though it looks like we may have topped out. But if we can manage to, find any form of support at this area here, then it's good, because it could still push prices up to at least form a double top on the chart, something like that. It's still possible. I already drew out these liquidity areas here, which is around 120 to 122. Actually 118 to 120. So these are the areas I'll be looking at if prices goes here. Now Ethereum, on the other hand, is actually something that has been playing out very well. So I took a short position on Ethereum, and I have my stop loss right here at $5,000 actually. After printing this kind of brick, I intend to hold on to this position. Maybe I'll add into it eventually, but we are going to have to wait and see. But Ethereum has been holding up really tight. It has actually been performing better than Bitcoin. It has been holding up better than Bitcoin, in my opinion. This is part of the reasons why I'm actually still a little bit hopeful for altcoin season, because if Ethereum is holding up like this, typically, when Bitcoin is dropping, other assets drop well as well. And Ethereum has not really experienced a heavy drop like that. Look at from where we are currently, from where Ethereum topped out to where it is currently. It's just about to where it dropped to on the dip is just about 12%. But if you look at Bitcoin, from where Bitcoin topped out to where it is currently, is actually about the same thing. It's also about 12%. It's 11% actually. But that's interesting to see, because Ethereum does not even look like it dropped that much, in my opinion. But it's interesting to see that Ethereum has been holding up pretty tight. Ethereum is supposed to have dropped much harder, So if Ethereum can drop and maintain this support level here, which is at 3.8, I think that would be really cool, because this was a previous resistance level before. So if Ethereum can come here and maintain this level here at 3.8, it would be really cool. And that's just about a 17% drop. It's not that bad. It's actually not that bad. So if Ethereum can do that and maintain that level, it would be great. But if Ethereum breaches this support level here, then we definitely have an issue, because this was where Ethereum rallied from. And if you look at this chart here, if Ethereum really starts to experience a bear market and starts to break below these levels here, we could be looking at Ethereum dropping as low as back to this area here, which is at $1,400. To think of Ethereum coming to this level is almost crazy to even talk about right now. But if you think it's not possible, you've not been in this market long enough. And I don't even think, if it comes here, I don't even think it's going to stop here. I think it's probably going to dip lower than this, probably to maybe $900. I don't want to sound too bearish, because it's way too early right now. But if you really think that this is not possible, you've not been in this market long enough. Crypto is very volatile, and I think it's really possible to happen. But we can't jump into that conclusion yet until we start seeing major signs. If we look at things like the stochastic RSI and the MACD on Ethereum, it actually looks pretty much exhausted, just like Bitcoin. Only difference is that Ethereum is still very much at the top here, still very much at that top there. And on the MACD as well, we haven't even gotten close to having any cross. In fact, another thing that I want to point out on Ethereum is looking at the weekly time frame. On the weekly time frame, I must say this thing looks very good. Very good. I'm telling you, on the weekly time frame, provided that it continues on this momentum. But it really looks good. Look at this here. It looks like we may have momentum building on the 1 month time frame, but that's the 1 month time frame, and it's a really it takes a while to play out. But looking at things like this, look at this. We just printed one green histogram on the MACD, which is pretty good, which means that we are likely going to have some more. But if you look at the previous ones here, we only had 2 before we printed the red one, so it's not something to ignore as well. But the weekly time frame, in my opinion, really determines how the monthly will play out, because if the weekly starts to lose momentum, definitely the 1 month is going to lose momentum as well. So fingers crossed on Ethereum. Overall, once Bitcoin starts to drop, and the drop maintains to be really bearish, and maybe with a lot of momentum, is likely going to affect the entire market. So I wouldn't put my money on Ethereum going astronomical in prices just yet until Bitcoin shows some level of strength, so to speak. There's one coin that I have always talked about in my private group. By the way, if you're not in my private group, you need to be in my private group, because that is where I drop a lot of information, a lot of updates as to what the market is doing in real time. It's just $3 to join my private group, so why are you not there? $3 per month. Come on, send me a message, drop a comment if you want to join in on that. And also, if you want to see me analyze any other coin, then you should drop that coin down in the description below, because I'm going to be looking into a lot of altcoins. I'm going to be looking into a lot of altcoins moving forward as the prices continue to drop. So right here on my radar is one that I've been looking at for a while, and I've been talking about it a lot in my private group. This is ICP. ICP is one of those AI projects that is doing its own thing, to be honest. And in the last cycle, ICP went as high as being number 3 on the market cap. I'm telling you, on total market cap, it was really number 3 coin at some point, but it didn't last for too long, because look at what happened. It literally plummeted very bad. So, and that's because people thought it was a scam coin, and there was a lot of scandal around it. But ICP has remained strong, and they've been building really cool. They've been building really cool, and they've been working on AI integration, which is something that they're already doing, and a bunch of developers are actually working on that. So ICP is interesting in my opinion, and I've been looking at these levels to buy. I've been trading ICP for a while now, and I've been looking at certain levels for ICP. This level is a level that I've bought a lot of ICP from, but I'm not holding any spots back now. I'll be trading this on leverage though. But if this level does not hold here, which I don't think it will, because prices are really dropping, but dollar cost averaging into this may not necessarily be a bad idea, obviously. But the ultimate point that I'll be looking to get into ICP will be as low as $3. So if ICP can get as low as $3, which is literally the bottom of the market and the bottom of where it was in the last cycle, I'll definitely buy a lot, you know, at the beginning of the cycle, actually, because this was October of 2023, and when Bitcoin bottomed out in November, it was even higher. It was around 3.4, and the lowest point is 2.8. So buying at this level will not be a bad idea. Buying anywhere in this area definitely will not be a bad idea. But depending on how prices react moving forward, ICP is something that I'm very much interested in. Like I said, drop in the comment section any coin that you want me to look into, and I'll look into it in the next video. Don't forget to smash the like button, subscribe, share, and do all that nice stuff. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.